Spider-Man: Homecoming is a joint production between Sony and Marvel Studios. Prior to starting Marvel Studios, Marvel was a comic book publishing company. They still are. Their rosters of characters included, among others, Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Spider-Man. Many years ago, they licensed some of their most popular properties in order to avoid bankruptcy. This included Spider-Man. While Marvel Comics publishes Spider-Man in their comics and uses him in their animated TV shows and films, they have been unable to use their own character in their own Marvel Studios series of films that began with the first Iron Man movie starring Robert Downey Jr. back in 2008. But after the heavy negative box office backlash to Sony's Amazing Spider-Man 2, a deal was worked out to share the character. So Spider-Man appeared for the first time in Marvel Studios' production Captain America: Civil War. Spider-Man: Homecoming piggybacks right after the events of that film, as the film opens with moments from that film, but being shot from a young Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man's point of view. Unlike the previous Spider-Man films starring Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, this Spider-Man is firmly entrenched into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's all the stronger for it. Robert Downey Jr. guest stars as Tony Stark / Iron Man. Also guest starring is Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan, whom we have not seen since Iron Man 3 back in 2013, and it's good to have him back. I don't know if any of the fan press mentioned this prior to the film's release, but there is another guest star from the Iron Man films that I was not expecting, but I am not going to say who, just in case you haven't seen the film yet. But I want to say it's good to have her back. And it looks like this return signals new developments for not only the character of Tony Stark, but also future Marvel films. So, what did I like most about this film? Well, first, I appreciate just how much of a character-driven superhero film this is. Let me first talk about Michael Keaton as the well-known Spider-Man villain, the Vulture. I loved him in this film, and I loved this iteration of the character. One of the main criticisms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies is just how underdeveloped and or generic a lot of the bad guys are in these films. And this iteration of Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, breaks that cycle. Adrian Toomes is an everyman villain. He's a common, blue-collar, everyday working man. He cares deeply about family and the families of his employees. But he is a man who has been pushed down too many times, to the point that he's decided it's time to start pushing back. He's not just doing bad things for the sake of being bad, and you can relate to him. And there is a subtext to this storyline about how sometimes the things that characters like Tony Stark do to help the world can have an unexpected negative impact on the common man. I hope that this subtext is explored more in future Marvel films, since it's just barely touched on in this film. By way of comparison, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, is an everyman, or should I say an every kid superhero. He's a kid in high school. He's trying to get along. He's trying to be accepted. He's trying to fit in. That's what has always made Spider-Man such a relatable character. Spider-Man has always been the superhero who might accidentally slip on a banana peel while battling a supervillain, and whose good intentions sometimes accidentally backfire against him from time to time. And in a lot of instances in this film, this is exactly what happens to him. After his adventure in Captain America: Civil War, he's having difficulty trying to adjust back to being just a regular high school kid again. He wants to play with the adult superheroes again, and he is trying very hard to prove himself to his mentor, Tony Stark. And quite often he overextends himself, and his lack of experience backfires on him. And he ends up becoming the Charlie Brown of superheroes. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there is a rather startling reveal during the film's third act that creates a very unexpected human connection between Spider-Man and the Vulture. And by film's end, there is a unique bond between the two characters that could lead to some interesting dramatic developments in future films. The other thing I like about this film is just how right it gets that period of American life called high school. I'm talking about the awkwardness, the cockiness, the nervousness, the boredom. Everything rings true and feels right. And everyone is casted young enough looking so that they really do look like they could be in high school. There is also no reliance on the usual high school stereotypes that we normally get in these types of films. Peter's crush interest is not the typical she's out of your league, popular schoolgirl type. Flash Thompson, while still antagonistic to Peter, is many times removed from the stereotypical high school jock antagonist that he's been portrayed as in past movies. I also really love the character of Michelle, played by Zendaya. She's the cynical high school outcast whom you might remember knowing or actually being back in the day. The one who looked at high school social functions like homecoming or the prom as a farce. The one who sat alone in the lunchroom because they just didn't really need to sit with anyone else in order to feel secure or wanted. This film spends a lot of time with Peter just being in high school, and with him just being Peter Parker. And I think it was a wise choice by everyone involved in making this film to give him a lot of room for character development before we see him in the next Avengers film. Well, he'll be sharing screen time with both the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. In many respects, this film reminds me most of Ant-Man because it is a more scaled-down Marvel film. It neatly avoids the New York City or the world is in imminent danger of being destroyed cliché in favor of a young man trying to prove himself story. The only word of warning I will give is that you will be better able to appreciate this movie if you have already seen Captain America Civil War and the first Avengers movie. As a comic fan who has read the classic Stan Lee and Steve Ditko Spider-Man books, I will say that it is this iteration that best nails the tone of those classic books. Sony and Marvel, you need to keep the deal to share this character going. Trust me on this one. So have you seen this film? What do you think? I'm looking forward to checking out your comments. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Bye. Time. And in a lot of instances, this film spends a lot of time with Peter Parker, just being in high school. And 3, 2, 1. This film, prom as a farce. The one who sat alone in the lunchroom because lunchroom. Ugh.